What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Tech Zone Productions. Today we are doing a very classic tutorial on how to edit singing vocals. So let's get started. So this is part one of this series that I will be doing to get this song into mix. So we're going to start off by playing a little bit of the sample here. So I'm going to go through all the layers before we start. So we have our first layer, which if I just solo that right now, it is, the first layer is our lead vocal.
I'm the boy in your other phone, lighting up inside your drawer.
Okay, now we're going to go to the second layer, which is the harmony.
I'm the boy in your other phone.
And our third layer is the instrumental. So we're just going to be focusing on the vocals for this video. If you wanted to learn about how to combine the harmony and how to edit the instrumental, then we'll do that in the next video. So starting off with the lead vocal here, we're gonna go ahead and open it up to see the waveforms. So the first thing that you'll notice is some of these volumes are louder than others. Now this song already is pretty normalized, and what I mean by that is the volume stays relatively consistent, but there are some part of it that does seem to be boosted, that does seem a little bit too loud, like especially this part. So it comes from here.
To meet you underneath the moonlight. Oh.
So it gets pretty loud. So that's very unpleasant for the audience because they have to constantly be adjusting the volume. We don't want that. And this is where compression takes in. Compression, basically, you set a threshold of where you want the compression to affect. So if I set it to negative 18 decibels, then anything louder than negative 18, so anything above this chart over here, it will apply the compression and it will lower it by a ratio. So you can adjust the amount that you want to lower it by. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Effects, Amplitude, and single band compressor. Single band compressor in Adobe Audition, I find that to be really nice. It's going to basically fix your it's basically going to satisfy your compressing needs 85% of the time to 90% of the time. Basically, this is all you need. You can go ahead and play with other compressors, but I find this to be really nice. So we don't really worry about anything here. We're just worrying about the threshold and the ratio. So the threshold, like I said, is where it's going to affect the volume. Anything louder than whatever the threshold is when it's going to apply the compression. Anything below that will be kept the same. So if you look at this, you will realize that most of the volume is around negative 18. So that's a good threshold because anything below that is a good volume. Anything above that is too loud and it's going to compress it. It's going to lower the volume. All right, so now you can set the ratio here. Now, I like to set around 5. 5 sometimes can be too much. Now, in this case, 5 is fine because I'm not compressing that much. Anything above 18 decibels, negative 18 decibels, is not peaking that much. So 5 should be fine. So I'm going to press apply, and you'll notice that all the louder waveforms gets compressed, so now it looks more normalized. So I'm going to go ahead and play the part that was loud before, and we're going to see if you can notice the compression.
Meet you underneath the moonlight. Oh, I wanna take two.
So you can hear it getting louder, but it wasn't as bad as before, and you don't really hear the compression. That's how you know you've done a good compressing this. If you can't hear, you shouldn't be able to hear any of the effects that you add when you're editing vocals. So I'm gonna go ahead and zoom this in. We're gonna go to get some water here. We're gonna go to the beginning here. Good water. We're gonna go to the beginning, and you'll notice that there's a lot of noise. Now this isn't noise from the microphone. I'm gonna boost this so we can hear it. This is noise from shoes, from clothing, from saliva, ASMR. That we don't want in our vocal. Well, I don't know. Some of you guys might want it, you know, if you know what I mean. So we're going to try and remove all this. So you just go to your volume and you just lower it. Now, if you don't want to lower it too much, especially with the breath, so I'm going to show you in a bit. So you notice how I only lowered it. I stopped here. Even though this is not the vocals yet, I stopped here because this is where the breath is. And if I remove that, then it's going to sound very unnatural. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. So it's pretty quiet now. There's a little bump here. I'm going to just leave that in. It's not a big deal. And then we don't want this sound, although you don't want to remove too much, because if you get closer to where the voice actually starts, if you remove too much, then it becomes too obvious, and it's going to be like a very sudden noise. So I'm going to give you an example. I don't know if this is a good example, but here, I'm just going to remove it completely. It's kind of sudden, and we don't want that because that's not natural. So I'm going to take the breath. This is the breath. And I'm going to leave it in, but I'm going to lower it just a bit here. Just a bit.
Boy in your other phone.
So we want to go through all this, and I'm going to skip it, but I'm just going to go through all this to show you what it sounds like in the middle. So if I take out this part, if I take it out completely, it's kind of sudden. So I'm going to leave it in, but I'm just going to reduce it so it's not that distracting.
Lighting up inside your drawer at home all alone.
Oh, this one especially. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it just a little bit. Yeah, just keep some of it in.
Pushing 40 in the friend zone.
This is a pretty easy process, although some people might, when you're starting off, you might compress it too much that it sounds unnatural. So it does take some practice to know how much you want to compress it by, but it's usually not that hard. It's very simple to do. So here's another breath, and we're going to go ahead and lower that.
Zone. We talking, then you walk away every day. Oh.
If you have some sibilance issues with the recording, sibilance is all that S sounds, and if that sounds very obvious, every time when you hear the sibilance, you can also lower that, but in this case, I don't really have that problem. It really depends on the vocalist.
And maybe you're right to doubt me, but...
So all this little popping are all the mouth sounds, and then the breath, I'm going to take that out a little bit.
But if you give me just one night, you're gonna see me.
So I'm not going to go through all this, but you get the basic idea. You can take out all these little popping sounds. And if you're using a dynamic microphone to record your vocals, it's probably not going to be that bad as a condenser. This is on like a condenser with a pretty sensitive capsule, and I was recording in a very quiet room, so all these small little sounds get kind of exaggerated. All right, so that should be it. It's a pretty time-consuming process depending on how long your song is. So what we've done so far is we got rid of the noise, and then we also compressed it so it's a little bit more even. So I'm going to listen to it now, solo.
I'm the boy in your other phone, lighting up inside your drawer at home all alone, pushing 40 in the...
That's good. Now I'm going to get to the fun stuff. Sorry. Starting with the EQ, the parametric equalizer. The EQ on Adobe Audition is very nice. I'm going to default this so you get a clean slate. It's a very, very nice tool. So let's start off by understanding what the EQ actually shows us. It shows us a graph of the frequencies. So if I want to make any frequencies louder, I can boost it or I can lower it. Now, our hearing range is from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. This, for some crazy reasons, Adobe Audition goes to 90 kilohertz. So we want to ignore everything behind here, basically. I'm pretty sure you can change it, but I'm not sure I'll do that. So we're going to keep this as it is because this is probably what it's going to look like. So we're going to ignore anything above 20 kilohertz and just work with here. So when I'm talking about the low ranges, I'm really referring to between 0 and 100 and maybe 150 to 200. And that is the low frequency. The mid, I'm referring to 200 to 1 kilohertz, and then above that is 2 kilohertz to 20 kilohertz, and that's the high. So that's what I mean. So you can kind of visualize this. This is kind of, Adobe kind of splits it for you. So this is the low, this is basically where the mid is, and this is basically where the high. It's a little bit off, but it's good enough. So we're gonna start off with a low. Now, one of the things that you have to understand about, one of the things about vocals is that the vocals is not really in any of the low frequencies. The really pleasant sound that you hear is from the mid or the high. So we want to remove any of the low frequencies, especially below 100 hertz. So we'll press the HB, which means high pass filter, and that's going to get rid of all the low frequencies. Now, what's in the low frequencies are snare drums. Drums in general are usually in the low frequencies. So if you're, for instrument, it's different, but for vocals especially, all the low frequencies, just noise, unwanted noise, breath noise, other sounds, and things like that. So we want to go ahead and apply the high pass filter. You can apply a lot or a little. Now what you can do is you can listen to this,
I'm the boy in your other phone.
and you can kind of hear the effect of the high pass filter. And you want to sweep it, and when you can hear it, you want to back off a little bit so that you can't really hear the high pass filter. So I'm going to play this bit.
I'm all alone, pushing 40 in the friend zone.
So I can still hear it now.
We talking, then you walk away every day. Oh, but you don't think.
So here's good. I'm
about
gonna,
me.
sorry. Here's good. I'm gonna go
Maybe
ahead and
you're
lower
right
back a
to
little
tell
bit.
me
And there you
why.
go. And that is the high pass filter. That's gonna get rid of, again, a lot of unwanted noise. All right, the other part, the mid frequencies of the EQ is a little bit challenging. What you really have to understand is what each frequency sounds like. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I would edit this. Again, every single vocal recording session is gonna be different. Hear what you like. Use your ears, all right? Don't use this graph as like, okay, I must boost this, even though it doesn't sound that good. You have to use your ears. If it sounds good, then it's right. So we're gonna go ahead and play this.
Boy in your other phone, lighting up inside your drawer at home, all alone, pushing 40 in the friend zone.
You will notice it has a little bit of warmth to it. It has a little bit lack of clarity. A lot of people, this will happen a lot of times in your recording where it just doesn't sound like it fits in the mixture. I'm gonna go ahead and bring the, I'm gonna mute the harmony, but I'm gonna bring the instrument to it.
I'm the boy in your other phone, lighting up inside.
So it sounds good, but it doesn't sound like it's fitting into the mix. It kind of sounds like it's sitting on top of the track. And part of the reason why is because there's not much clarity to this. So it sounds kind of boxy. Sounds kind of like you're recording inside of a small box. It sounds a little bit, not necessarily the reverb, but just the feel for it.
I'm all alone, pushing 40.
So I'm going to go ahead and remove some of the lower frequencies because that's typically the warmness that we're going to get rid of.
In the friend zone, we talking, then you walk away.
And when you remove frequencies, you don't want to remove below -5, okay? Like if you remove more than that, then that's going to be too obvious.
Every day. Oh, but you don't think twice about me. And maybe you're right to
So I'm just going to remove like that much about it.
me, but if you give me just one night,
So I'm going to turn it off.
you're gonna see me in a new light.
So it's a little bit more clear. You get a little bit more to the top end, the higher frequencies. And that's also another note that you should know is when you remove a lower frequencies, you're basically boosting all the other frequencies. So it's a fun fact. Now I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the instrumental so we can really hear how it sounds.
Yeah, if you give me just one night to meet you underneath.
All right, so now we're to the mid frequencies now. Now the middle frequencies have some really nice sounding to it. And also have some unpleasant sound. So I like to do a technique called sweeping, where I boost one of the frequencies. Now, by the way, this allows you to adjust the width of how much you want to boost. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust it to a pretty decent size. So I'm going to boost it pretty significantly. And what I'm trying to hear is between 400 and 2 kilohertz. And there should be this very annoying nasally sound that we'll need to get rid of. And that sounds unpleasant. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how this is done.
The moonlight. Oh, I wanna take two. I wanna break through. I wanna know the real thing about you, so I can see you in a new light. Oh, I wanna take two. I wanna break through. I wanna know the real thing about you.
So around 1 kilohertz, a little bit after that, we're gonna go ahead and cut this off. Again, this depends on your vocals, so you do have to do the sweeping method and hear what it is. So I'm gonna remove this. I'm gonna make this a little bit wider and just cut it off a little bit. It's a little bit unpleasant frequency, and that should smooth things out in the mix. Without, with. All right, so now we're moving on to the higher frequencies, and here's when the fun begins. So you realize it still sounds a little bit muffled. It still sounds a little bit boxy, not much clarity. So we're gonna go ahead and take the H, which stands for high, I think, and you can change the setting if you want. If you want a very sudden boost or if you want a gradual boost. I'm gonna go with a gradual boost, and I'm just gonna boost the high frequencies quite a bit. Now again, depends on your vocals, and most microphones, most condenser microphones will already boost this for you, so you don't have to boost it anymore. But my microphone tends to be a bit flat, so I'm gonna boost this and see what it and hear what it sounds like.
Oh, I wanna take two. I wanna break through. I wanna know the real thing.
So that's without.
About you, so I can see you in a new light. You're gonna see me in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night to meet you underneath the moonlight. Oh, I wanna take two. I wanna break through. I wanna know the real thing about you, so I can see you in a new light.
That sounds much better. It brings a lot more of the clarity, so it's fitting. It fits in more with the mix. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off. And when we turn it off, it has that warm, it has that boxy sound. When we turn it on, it really brings out the voice.
Give me just one night to meet you underneath the moonlight. Oh.
And there you go. Now you do want to be careful though, because we are boosting the frequencies. We are boosting the frequencies that have the sibilants inside, and the sibilants are all the S sounds. That is pretty unpleasant. So you do want to be careful when you're boosting the high frequencies.
I wanna take two. I wanna break through. I wanna know the real thing about you, so I can see you in a new light.
All right, I'm gonna keep that as it is. It's pretty good. You can do a little bit more adjusting to it depending on your situation. I could probably do a little bit more, but it's pretty good for now. Now, the second effect that we're gonna do is, like I was saying before, the sibilants. This is the de-esser, and it gets rid of all the sounds. Now, there are several presets here that you could use. I just use the presets. You can use the de-esser, which gets rid of a lot of the sibilants, but sometimes this is too much. So you can, what you can do is you're gonna play it through, and anytime that it's detects sibilants, it's actually gonna reduce it. So I'm gonna play the part that has more of the sibilants.
To meet you underneath the moonlight. What do I do with all this? What do I do with all this love that's rushing through my veins?
So that sounds good. Now, sometimes this setting is too much, so you can go ahead and do the ducking, but de-esser in this situation works pretty nicely. So let's hear it.
You're gonna see me in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night to meet you underneath the moonlight. What do I do with all this?
So this is pretty good now. The last effect, probably the most exciting effects. This effect is called reverb, and I'm sure you guys already heard of that term, and I'm just gonna explain it real quick. It brings out, right now this vocal is pretty dry. It's recorded in a studio where it's a very quiet environment, and well, it's recorded in a home studio, but you get the idea. It's a very quiet environment. It doesn't have much room or ambient to it, it sounds kind of trapped. Like it sounds kind of claustrophobic in a way. So reverb really opens that. And reverb also in Adobe Audition, I'm not sure about other software, it also helps with stereo imaging. It makes it so that the microphone recording turns into stereo. So it makes it sound like it's inside a room. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Studio Reverb. And I have a preset here called Text Zone Singing Reverb. How convenient. And you can just copy the settings for the characteristics here and make the dry 100. So I'm just going to you can just pause this to copy it down. And wait, all you really need to adjust here is the wet level. And this adjusts how much percentage the effect is being applied. So I'm going to try 100 right now. You'll never do 100, but I'm just going to give you guys an example. If you like that, you can keep it. But for my taste, I usually like it so that you can't really hear the reverb, but it's still there. So I'm going to try 20.
I'm the boy in your other phone, lighting up inside your drawer at home all alone, pushing 40 in the friend zone. We talk and then you walk away every day.
All right, so I can... My bad. I can hear it a bit, so I'm going to remove it to about 17. That should be good.
I'm the boy in your other phone, lighting up inside your drawer at home all alone, pushing 40 in the friend zone. We talk and then you walk away every day. Oh, but you don't think twice about. Oh, I wanna take two, I wanna break through, I wanna know the real thing about you.
All right, so that's about it. And 17 is usually good. You don't want to do too much because then it becomes distracting. You want to do enough that it's there, but then you don't really notice the reverberation effect. So we're going to do a comparison of before the effect. So I'm going to turn all these effects off.
I'm the boy in your other phone, lighting up inside your drawer at home all alone.
All right, now I'm going to do an after.
Pushing 40 in the friend zone. We talk and then you walk away every day. Oh, but you don't think twice about me. And maybe you're right to doubt me, but if you give me just one night, you're gonna see me in a new.
All right, so that's about it. In this tutorial, we learned how to do compression. We learned how to equalize vocals. Again, it really depends. Hear it, all right? Make sure that you hear it. If it sounds good, it's usually fine. And we learned how to use depressor and studio reverb, and we made this vocal that otherwise sound dry into into that it fits into the instrumental. So thank you so much for watching this tutorial, and this is a bit longer than I expected. And stay tuned for part 2 when I'm going to go over how to edit the instrumental, how to EQ that, and then maybe another part 3, I'm not quite sure, for how to just combine everything together and make it sound like a final product. So that's about it. Be sure to check out the link in the description for if you want to hear this recording. And be sure to check my friend out and subscribe to him. He has some really nice videos. That's really nice upcoming videos that I think you guys will really like. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time with another episode of Text Zone Productions.